Halloween is a spooky time, isn't it? That's kind of the whole point. You dress up and try and scare other people. It's all harmless fun most of the time. Sometimes truly awful things happen on Halloween. Nasty crimes that will forever burn that day into the minds of the victims. My name is Danny Burke and this video is the top 10 scary crimes committed on Halloween. Coming at number 10 now, we have Taylor Van Diest. On Halloween 2011, this 18-year-old headed out to a party. She never came home. She was found with fatal head wounds by the side of a railway. She later died in hospital. She had been texting her boyfriend while walking to her party, and in one of the last few texts she said she was being creeped, basically followed by someone behind her. That someone turned out to be Matthew Forrester. He had intended to sexually assault her but smashed her head in with a flashlight when she fought back. Fortunately, his DNA was found under her fingernails, which did help bring the conviction. Coming at number 9 now, we have poison. On Halloween 1974, 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien from Texas tried some of his trick-or-treat candy. It was a pack of Pixie Sticks, a powdered candy. He tasted it and he said it was bitter. Then he said his stomach hurt and began vomiting and convulsing in the bathroom. He died on his way to hospital less than an hour after eating that candy. It took the police quite a while, but they eventually found the killer, Timothy's father, Ronald O'Brien. He had laced the candy with cyanide, hoping to kill his own son Timothy, and claimed $30,000 on a life insurance policy he had taken out in the boy's name. He was found guilty of murder and executed 10 years later. Next up at number 8 now, we have Yoshihiro Hattori. In 1992, this 16-year-old Japanese exchange student was living in Baton Rouge. He was invited to a Halloween party on October 17th. He arrived at the wrong house and rang the doorbell. After no answer, he and his friend started walking back to their car. That's when the owner of the home, Rodney Pierce, opened the door armed with a Magnum revolver. Yoshihiro turned around and said, "We're here for the party," as he walked towards him. Rodney told him to not come any closer, and when he still did, he shot him at point blank range, killing him. Incredibly, he was acquitted of murder after his defense team argued he was defending his own home, but he was forced to pay $650,000 to Yoshihiro's family in damages. What do you guys think of this story? I think it's a little bit crazy that he wasn't sent to prison. Coming at number 7 now, we have Chris Jenkins. This 21-year-old was at a Halloween party in a Minneapolis bar in 2002. He never made it home and disappeared that night. 4 months later, his body was found in the Mississippi River, still wearing his Halloween costume. Now, police thought that because he was drunk that night and the cause of death was drowning, it must have been an accident or perhaps a suicide. His parents, though, refused to believe this, and in 2006 it was reclassified as a homicide. This brought them no closer though to identifying the killer. One theory is that this is part of the smiley face murders, which have involved the death of 40 male college students in the US, all from drowning and sometimes with a smiley face graffiti found near the body. Either way, the case is still unsolved. Next up at number 6 now, we have Tony Bagley. This is a tragic story of a 7-year-old who was out trick-or-treating on Halloween 1994. He was with his sister, his aunt, and his mother when he approached a street corner. Suddenly, a hooded man ran out into the street and fired a gun at the family. He then jumped into a waiting car and fled. Tony was shot in the head and later died. The case was a total mystery for the police. There were no motives, no suspects, and no leads at all. A man had just shot and killed a 7-year-old for seemingly no reason at all. In the years since then, the case has remained cold. There is a $100,000 award for any information that could help the investigation. Okay, at number 5 now, we have Martha Moxley. The night before Halloween 1975, this 15-year-old went to a party. On the morning of Halloween, her body was found under a tree, mangled by a golf club. The case went cold for 25 years until Michael Skakel was charged with her murder. By that time, he was 40 years old. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. A year later, he appealed to the Supreme Court, citing prosecutorial misconduct. He was allowed out on bail in 2013, but in late 2016, the Supreme Court reinstated his murder conviction. He still pleads his innocence. Next up at number 4 now, we have the roommate murderer. On the night of Halloween 2004, roommates Leslie Mazzara, Adrienne Insogna, and Lauren Mianza went to bed after a quiet night of handing out candy to kids. Lauren woke up at 1 AM to the sound of a scuffle in the house. She panicked and ran into her backyard to hide. It was then that she saw a man climb out of a window in the house. She waited for a bit until he was gone and went back upstairs only to find that her roommates had been brutally murdered. Over 1,500 people were interviewed, including one of their friends, Lily Prudhomme. Now she was innocent, but her boyfriend, Eric Koppel, was suspicious to say the least, having refused to give a DNA sample to the police. A year after the crime, he finally confessed to the double murder but gave no reason for why he did it. He is now serving life in prison with no chance of parole. Next up at number 3 now, we have Aaron Thomas. In 2009, 3 teenage girls in Virginia were abducted by a man with a gun on their way home from trick-or-treating on Halloween. It happened as they were crossing a car park. They were taken at gunpoint to a wooded area where 2 of them were sexually assaulted. Incredibly, the 3rd girl managed to send a text to her mum giving their location and telling her to call 911 right away. This caused the man to panic and run, but he couldn't hide. It took 2 years, but police finally arrested Aaron Thomas, a man already a suspect in dozens of sexual assault cases going back over a decade. Alright, next up at number 2 now, we have the egging. As long as trick-or-treating has been around, so has egging. If some kids don't get what they want on Halloween, they throw eggs at people. It's not nice, but it still happens. That is what happened to Carl Jackson on Halloween 1998. On that night, he was driving with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a kids party. He drove past some teenagers who threw eggs at his car. Carl got out and started arguing with them, understandably so. He got back into the car, one of the teenagers then pulled out a gun and shot him once in the head, killing him. 17-year-old Curtis Jackson was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Every single Halloween, he gets a card delivered to him in prison. It's from Carl's mother and simply reads, "I'm glad you're still there." And finally, number 1 now, we have Nima Louise Carter. This little girl was 19 months old on the night of Halloween 1977. Her parents put her to sleep but were horrified the next morning to find that she had disappeared. Police came up with a terrifying theory that because the windows to the bedroom were totally locked, her abductor must have been hiding in the closet that whole night and snuck out of the house with her when the parents were asleep. A month later, some local kids were playing in an abandoned house nearby. They opened up the old fridge in the kitchen, and to their horror, Nima's decomposed body came tumbling out. The cause of death was asphyxiation. The case still remains a total mystery to this day. Well, I think this video has put Halloween in a whole new light for me. Obviously, to be fair, most of these horrific crimes weren't committed because it was Halloween. They could have happened at any time of the year, but there is something kind of extra scary about them happening on that particular date. What do you guys think though? As always, stay safe, be good. My name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next video.